Hello everyone, Jeff here. This week's been a really good week for Antilia development, and I'm pretty excited to show you some of the things I've been working on. But before we get into that, I'd like to discuss a little bit the status of the project, what we're working on, and where we're trying to go with the things right now. So obviously we're still working on the fishing alpha. There's quite a bit of gameplay stuff, and then probably a good month of content adding, where we're going to add a lot of content to the game, all the fish, the fishing skills, all that stuff. So quite a ways to go on that, but we're working away at it. As far as design is concerned, we're starting to think a little bit beyond the fishing alpha now, because a lot of the gameplay systems, we've kind of designed them. There's not a whole lot that can be said about them until we implement them and see how they work out. So for design, we're thinking about what comes next, and I've talked about this a little bit before. It'll be the re-improving or reworking the tapey meshes, the character meshes, adding clothing options and a clothing crafting system. So in the process, we've been kind of looking through the character creation demo gallery, looking at all the different characters you guys have created. And it's been commented by the developers and others that things look a little bit same-ish sometimes. The tapey all kind of have a very similar look. So I'm thinking about ways to break that up. Now, obviously, that's a long ways off still. We need to get the fishing alpha out first, but I'd like to start thinking a little bit about this. And I'd like to hear your suggestions in the comment section down below as far as what character creation options you'd like to see added for the tapey. And we've also kind of opened the door to reconsidering the tapey bloodlines and maybe making a few additions there. So if you have any animal species you'd like to see, they have to be mammals. They can't overlap with the race Sui too much. So there's some, restrictions there. But I'd like to hear your suggestions for what animal species you'd like to see in the game that aren't already represented by the Saki, Reisui, or the tapey. So let's go ahead and get started and look at what we've been working on this week. So as you can see, things are looking a bit different this week. I added a new tree type, and also the atmospheric rays coming through the trees, I've added that back in. Not strictly necessary, just something I had a little fun with. Also, this is all being rendered through the deferred rendering path, which allows for things such as the clutter to receive shadows, and a few other really nice improvements in visual effects. I spent quite a bit of time on just improving the lighting. It kind of came out looking a bit the same in the end. I tried a few experiments with different colored ambient and diffuse lighting, ended up going back to a neutral tone light just because it was making it a little difficult to control the colors in the scene. You'll notice the trees popping in. I spent some time improving the scene rendering system, which determines what's visible and what's not. I'm doing that in preparation to create a new system that renders the trees as billboards in the distance, so we can see trees in a distance but not have to render them entirely with their geometry. So some improvements that I'm planning there, but we're not quite there yet. Same with the clutter. I started making some moves towards going back to the clutter system we use in the MMORPG, which was based on the splatting layers. We didn't have splatting layers for a while, so in the meantime, I kind of created this other system for rendering clutter, but it lacks some of the features we had in the MMO, such as being able to dynamically change the density of the clutter and the rendering distance. So I'm going to be bringing those features back here shortly. Next, I want to go up to these cactus, and I'll show you the next feature I've been working on. So these cactus are rendering a little darker than they should be. I'll have to look into that. But to illustrate the next thing I was working on, I've been working on the energy, food, and health system. So when I click on these cactus, I'll receive some cactus fruit, but I'm also going to use energy when clicking on it. And I'm also going to lose a little bit of health. I'm doing that so I can test this recharge mechanic. So we'll go ahead and start clicking on some of these, and you'll see the energy goes down, the health goes down, and then they start both of them recharging based on the food. So still some work to be done there, and I'm pretty sure some of it, I think this whole hotbar needs a bit of a black border or something. It's a little hard to, I don't know, it's not quite working for me as far as the way I want it to look versus what I'm getting. So I'll keep working on that. But the core mechanic there is working, and I introduced some kind of new stats in the process that we didn't have in the MMO, which controls the rate and speed at which food recharges your health and energy. That'll be important when we start kind of leveling up and progressing with our character. We're going to want to, yeah, they're real shiny. Okay, I'm going to fix the cactus. Anyway, as I was saying, I'm going to have to spend a little time thinking about this because, yeah, as our energy bar gets larger, say instead of 50 of 50, we had 50 of 500, that would take a really long time to recharge. So it's important that those recharge rates and speeds can change as your character progresses. So I've made some improvements there to help along with that. So this next feature I just got working earlier this morning, and normally I wouldn't show off a feature that's just barely functional at this point. But there's a bit of fun and some hijinks we can have here, so I'll go ahead and show it off. And the idea here is that I want to be able to equip things in the character's hands. So when I drop this into the character hand slot, this character doesn't update quite yet. And like I said, it's very rough. I haven't positioned or sized the object yet. Really the challenge here is just getting the object to be attached to the character's hand. And you can see as I run, the object is attached to the character skeleton. So that was the challenge I was trying to solve this morning, and I got that working, and I put together a pretty nice system for equipment where game object components, simulation components can independently, they can each provide kind of like attachment points. We have an attachment point system now and attachments. So a bit technical, but I've been working on that, and that's another one, obviously for the fishing alpha, we got to be able to put fishing poles in our hands. And I also just kind of like this direction we're moving in where the character can hold a bunch of different objects. And for things like food, you would almost certainly put the food in your hand and then eat it and stuff like that. So I'll go ahead and show off a few things here that are kind of silly and fun. This right here will be very familiar if we put the fishing pole in the character's hand. We've got this problem again. We've been here before, right? So anyone who's not familiar, that was a problem we had in the MMORPG at one point. And you'll notice this character over here is like a little delayed. Every time I flip back to it, it's getting updated. But we'll see what other hijinks. Now, obviously, when we put large objects in the hand, I've got some work to do there because I want these two hand slots to merge into one hand slot when holding a large object. And obviously, this is not correct. I don't want the tent attached to a single hand. The reason I'd put it in the middle of one hand slot is that I kind of want the character to use both hands to hold large objects. And in the case of the tent, it would probably render maybe as a crate or a box or something, or maybe just as a little tent. I'll have to work that out. We could think about maybe a folded version of the tent, but that gets into extra character creation, which I was trying to avoid. So we got some silliness going on there, but you get the idea. Here's a fish sword. It doesn't quite work. But you get the idea that we'll be able to equip items in your hand. There's still some work scaling them and that sort of thing. But definitely with the fishing alpha, we need that so that we can equip poles in our hands and start fishing. Well, that's going to do it for this week's update. As always, if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them in the comments section down below, especially when it comes to new character creation options for the TAPE. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on that. So thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you next time. Take care. A special thanks goes to this month's Patreon supporters. If you'd like to support the project, you can do so by visiting www.patreon.com/Antilia.